There are only 5 ways that veterans can be service connected, and there are no more or no less, just 5. Now, over on Veterans Daily with Jason from Veterans Info Tap, we covered this topic in extreme detail, and I'm going to leave that video down below in the pinned comments for you. But for this, I'm going to summarize those 5 ways of service connection. But definitely be sure to check that out because we go over the how evidence shifts for each basis of service connection, and that part is absolutely key. Now, the 5 are direct, secondary, aggravation, presumptive / Tera. I'm going to tell you the difference of those two. And then, of course, the most least common, and this would really, really suck, is if VA healthcare makes a mistake, like you had surgery on your left knee, but for some reason they do it on your right knee. That would really suck, but that can also be a claimed VA disability as well. So for direct, it's the big 3. If you watch this channel, you know the big 3, okay? Before I say this, comment below what the big 3 are. This is the most critical thing every single veteran in the United States of America needs to understand, are what are the big 3. So I'm going to give you 5 seconds, comment below, push pause, do whatever, and then I'll tell you what the big 3 are, and hopefully you get those right. So 5, 4, kind of feel dumb doing this, 3, 2, 1, 0. The big 3 are the in-service event, the current diagnosis, and the nexus. So the in-service event is, simply put, evidence from service. Medical evidence is going to be really strong. There's also evidence other than medical, right? So telling the VA or your C&P examiner that you have bad knees because you did 7 combat deployments as an infantryman, you're carrying a heavy load, XYZ, that is evidence other than medical, which is still good. It's definitely not as strong as medical evidence from service, especially a diagnosis in service. That's the in-service event. The current diagnosis, it needs to be chronic, right? So scraping your knee is not a chronic condition. Now, having missing cartilage that deteriorates over time, that's a chronic condition, right? So it has to be chronic in nature, and current meaning within 1 year. So not acute, not asymptomatic, none of that matters. It's got to be chronic. And then, of course, the nexus for direct, because these are the basis of service connection, which means the nexus must link your current diagnosis with your evidence from service directly to your military service. I have migraines because of my time in the Marine Corps, because XYZ happened. I have a current diagnosis. Here's my current symptoms. Boom, service connected direct. The second one is secondary, which completely changes the big 3. Okay. The secondary basis of service connection, you no longer need evidence from service. That means diddly squat at this point. What you do need is a primary service connected disability. So I just mentioned migraines were service connected via direct. We're going to use migraines as the primary service connected disability here. So I have migraines. I have now developed anxiety as a result of my migraines. I need to get evidence that indicates my anxiety stems from my migraines. And now the nexus, basis of service connection, connects my anxiety to my migraines. It's no longer current diagnosis with military or evidence from service. That's for direct. Secondary is current diagnosis to the claim condition, and that's the evidence, right? Now, the third one is aggravation, and this one is extremely difficult to win. Although it's possible, it's very difficult. I like to describe aggravation as a graph here. This is my magical graph, if you can picture that. And let's say I have asymptomatic flat feet in my MEPS, my entrance exam. Gradually speaking, as you age and as you live life, your flat foot condition is going to become worse. So it started asymptomatic. It's going to be a chronic condition at some point, and you're going to see this gradual decline that kind of goes like that. Aggravation must show not just a current diagnosis or not just a diagnosis from service, because that's already given, that's already there. It means nothing. You need to show how military service aggravated the condition beyond its natural regression. So if we have our little line here, That's natural regression. You need to show evidence that says, hey, I had asymptomatic flat feet. I joined the service. I'm going to use the Marine Corps, my example. Something happened, and now my flat foot condition got really worse, and now it's going down. That is a lot worse than natural regression. Okay. That's the point of aggravation. Now you have presumptive and Tera, and people get this wrong all the time. Presumptive does not, well, it does require a nexus, but the nexus is conceded by the VA. That's what makes it presumptive. Okay. So you don't need a nexus. You only need two things. You need to meet the criteria for that presumptive condition. So PACT Act is time and location. There are other presumptives that are just time based, like a few cancers. Another time based presumptive is tinnitus, hearing loss, or arthritis within 1 year. So some are just time. The PACT Act is time and location, and that's presumptive. It doesn't require a nexus. You just need a current diagnosis, meet the criteria, bada bing, bada boom, service connected. It's that easy, seriously. Tera, on the other hand, not so much easy, not easy at all. It requires a medical nexus, and the nexus is not necessarily a direct to military service. The nexus isn't really secondary, although it's closely associated with secondary. It's not aggravation. Tera is, hey, I was exposed to asbestos. I now have this condition. So the nexus links your current diagnosed condition with asbestos exposure. That is Tera. It requires a specialized medical opinion. And obviously, depending on what kind of exposure or diagnosis we're talking about, that specialty can kind of, it's not I'm a Tera specialist. It, depending on what it is how it's going to be is who's going to give the opinion. The specialty that's going to give their opinion. Holy baloney! I'm not even going to edit that out. You feel me? Okay, it's late at night. I'm trying to get one out today. And the last basis of service connection, which is extremely rare, is when when VHA, so your healthcare providers at the VA, to include community care, makes a mistake. If they make a mistake and it causes a chronic condition, and a disability in your life, yes, that is a claim condition. Now, I use the example because that's what Jason used whenever we did the video. So you definitely want to check that out. And we go way in depth as to what evidence is needed for each basis of service connection, because it's not the same at all. But he had said, if your right knee hurts and you get surgery, you're getting surgery on your right knee, but for some reason they do the left knee, then your left knee would be eligible for service connection, right? That was just one example. There are many examples. Let's say they cut a nerve on accident. You're doing shoulder surgery. They cut a nerve, and now you have radiculopathy or whatever, neuralgia, paralysis in your left arm. That would also be a claimed condition. That's it. Those are your 5 basis for service connection. The most common, and I'll kind of rank these as to what's common. Direct is number 1. Okay. Generally, I would say secondary is number 2, but with the PACT Act specifically, recently, presumptive is probably in the 2 spot. But if you look at VA disability claims, longevity, obviously prior to the PACT Act, it would go direct, secondary, presumptive / Tera, aggravation, and then VA healthcare. So direct, secondary, and presumptive / Tera are definitely the common 3. I don't want to say big 3. That means something else. Aggravation, extremely difficult, right? Flat feet is the most common aggravated condition that I see that has been denied because your evidence from service needs to show a natural regression beyond the condition's natural regression. But that's all I got. All right. If you made it to the end, please let me know. I love seeing comments of veterans who made it to the end. You're going to see this below in the pinned comment as well. And the video from Veterans Daily that goes in depth. It's a whole hour-long conversation about these 5. And that's all I got. Thank you very much.